Hello, everybody. Welcome to the ArcGIS Pro stream session today. So thank you so much for being here. We might have another couple people filtering in, and that is absolutely okay. We will pop up the agenda also as well. So feel free to stay for the parts that are valuable to you, but maybe if there's a part that's a little bit less valuable and you want to sneak away to a different thing, that's totally okay. We just want to make sure that you're getting the most out of this session as possible. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So you may recognize both me and Mia from yesterday from Plenary. I'm Jess, this is Mia. We are both part of the technical solutions team based in Wellington. So our job is usually to come to conferences like this and dive into the technology and the different use cases, try to put ourselves in your shoes and come up with what we think would be valuable for all the different industries, all the different workflows that you guys use these tools for. And as I mentioned before, the agenda. So this is what we're going to be talking about today, 75 minutes with a lot of content to cover. We're going to do our best to get through a lot of different subjects. But basically what we want to talk about is some highlights of an earlier release that happened a bit earlier on in the year. We want to talk about 3.5 because that was the big one that happened. That is the most kind of fresh. So we'll break that down a little bit into managing your data, analyzing, and then visualizing and sharing. We also have some tips and some efficiency enablers when it comes to automating your workflows in ArcGIS Pro, as well as a little section on AI. The AI section will be a little bit short. Please be aware that tomorrow we do have 2 sessions on AI. So if you have AI questions, those might be better placed for tomorrow. And then lastly, we'll have a little bit of integration discussions about how we use Pro with other technologies, and then we'll end on Q&A. So with that, we're going to start. Hopefully you are in the right room. We are talking about Pro today. So for those of you who are here because you want to know what Pro is, in like 30 seconds, I'll tell you what it is. ArcGIS Pro is a really powerful desktop GIS tool. It's developed by Esri for creating, analyzing, managing, and sharing spatial data and maps. And that involves 2D or 3D, really advanced spatial analysis as well, geoprocessing tools, and having a connected environment with ArcGIS Online and Enterprise. And so most of us in this room are here because we use Pro in our daily lives and our works. And so that's why we're here to kind of learn about what's new. So as I mentioned before, we had 2 releases. So we had 3.4 and 3.5. And so our job today is to kind of break down those capabilities. But we do want to mention that we're going to be showing like brand new tools and brand new stuff that came out in 3.4 and 3.5. But a lot of the changes that happen in these releases are kind of under the radar. They're things that is just based off listening to feedback of people saying something was a little slow and needed to be faster, that there were error messages that have now been fixed. There's not as many bugs. This is a lot of the times the work that goes into these releases, and it does make a big difference because the team put a lot of effort in making sure that each release is a little bit smoother than the previous. So starting off, Mia is going to take us through some of the things that you might have missed in this 3.4 release.
Cool, thanks Jess. So there are a number of enhancements in ArcGIS 3.4, and we want to highlight a few of them before we jump into those 3.5 updates. Here's a list of a bunch of them. We'll go over a few, but maybe not all of them, but there are definitely quite a few things in 3.4, so good to check out if you missed it. So to start, we've got a new tool. So this tool generates a definition query in the SQL format from your selected features or rows from feature layers or tables. To use it, all you got to do is create an active selection of your features or highlighted rows in your table, and then select the generation method. So as you can see here, its default is match selection. This is where the object or global ID will be used to generate your query with values present in the selection. Or we can also use field values, so you can generate that query with values from a specified field as well. We can also now create combo charts. So combining two different types of data and series types into one graph. This provides flexibility to combine both bar and line series in a single chart. And because dual y-axes are now also supported, you can show two different scales, enabling you to show the relationships between trends in different data sets. In this chart here, you can see river flow and river height. So two different units shown on each axis, a clear example of different scales showing the same trend. We can also now set the class symbology in the symbology pane. So instead of creating a definition query, you can now quickly use the checkboxes to turn on and off symbol classes, as you can see here. This will hopefully streamline your workflows into creating those beautiful and uncluttered maps. Now we'll move to administrators. So you can now control the duration of time organization members can take ArcGIS Pro licenses offline. Setting these limits allows your organizational members to pick any number of days up until that limit. And while allocating those days, you can also enable warnings for those users to alert them before those licenses expire, so we can limit those users getting caught out. Within ArcGIS Online, you can find this pane in the Licenses tab in your organization, or if you're in ArcGIS Pro, you can find it in the License tab of your settings. A little bit more for our admins today. So you system administrators deploying ArcGIS Pro across a team or an organization might need to control application settings on behalf of your users. ArcGIS Pro allows administrators to set default values for a select number of these application settings. And you can also lock these settings so that users can't change them themselves from the value that has been set by the administrator. 3.4 also saw a couple of updates in searching through Pro. So you can now search for properties and settings in application options, map properties, layer properties, and other dialog boxes, making it easy to find those pesky settings without having to scroll through the entire list. Semantic search also became available for command search, dialog search, geoprocessing, and model builder search. But it is only available if you opt in, so you would need to install the semantic search AI model to use it. Back to semantic search, it's AI enhanced, which means that it understands the meaning and context of your search rather than focusing on exact text matches. So you could describe your problem and find the solution to it without knowing the option name itself. We will talk a little bit more about the AI options within Pro later on this session. New in layouts, that now supports bullet point formatting. So you can create lists with indents, adding some more variety into those layouts. To help keep you more updated, 3.4 also came with version-specific patch notifications so that you can get patch updates for your deployed ArcGIS Pro version. So for those of you that are not on the latest update of ArcGIS Pro, you will still get notified of the latest quality updates for that version. And finally, in ArcGIS Pro 3.4, you can also now share 3D tile layers in ArcGIS Enterprise. To do this, you'll need ArcGIS Enterprise 11.4 or later, and this can be shared as an integrated mesh or 3D object, providing large-scale immersive visualizations. So that was just a quick overview on what you might have missed in ArcGIS Pro 3.4, and now we'll go through what's new in the most recent release, ArcGIS Pro 3.5. To start, I'll go through some new updates we've seen in managing our data. First update we have here are portal projects, which allow different users to edit the same project. For this, you must have Enterprise 11.4 or the latest version of Portal. And instead of sharing files manually or relying on network drives, you can save and access your projects right from Portal. These rely on shared update groups in Enterprise to control access and editing, allowing members to update items that are shared with the group compared to regular groups that allow you to view and open the project but not necessarily save changes to Portal. We also have the Extract Deeds Dimensions or COGO Reader, which is a new tool that allows you to read dimensions off of deeds, converting the text into numerical values. These same deed courses can be manually entered into the Traverse tool. However, this allows room for error. And with the new COGO Reader, the values can be extracted from documents, saving time and hassle and reducing user error. Now, for those of us who get very comfortable in how we like ArcGIS Pro set up, you can now customize and save your pane sets. So along with the default options that we've got mapping, geoprocessing, and editing, you can now create and edit your own custom panes. For example, for those of you constantly searching for new locations on a map, you could create a pane set to include the locate pane, or you could reduce clutter by removing the panes that you don't use all the time. You could assign keyboard shortcuts to these specific pane sets or add them to your quick access toolbar. Migrating your utility networks is also now simpler with the new Utility Network Migration Wizard. This guided process will help you transition your existing networks into the ArcGIS utility network model way more efficiently. These updates will be useful to you UN experts and will help simplify the mapping of your data to those asset groups and types. So as you might have seen in plenary yesterday, there's also the new Vertices and Nodes tool. This is a customizable graphic overlay which symbolizes how features are constructed and how they might connect to other features. You can turn it on at the bottom of your map. As we saw in plenary, we had a look at some dangles, but there are also elements like isolated points, which aren't connected to anything, and pseudonodes, which are the endpoints of two different line features that you could be merging. You could also customize this tool to select which of these elements are important to highlight. And for dangle elements, you can also set the tolerance for whether a feature is identified as a dangle, a line feature with no endpoint, or a vertex. So you can simplify that with a dangle tolerance. And finally, editing templates have always been an important part of adding new features in ArcGIS Pro. But up until ArcGIS Pro 3.3 and Enterprise 11.3, the use of editing templates outside of ArcGIS Pro was restricted to just feature templates. The use of group or preset editing templates could not be used in web applications. ArcGIS Pro 3.3 and Enterprise 11.3 brought in the notion of shared templates, bringing group and preset templates in by writing them directly to the database. And now in the latest release of ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro 3.5, we can now also share these group and preset templates with hosted feature layers. So now with the store templates command, which is found through searching through the command search, we can do this. I'll now give you guys a quick demonstration on how this might go. So here you might recognize this map from yesterday. We have our Manage Templates pane up here, which we find in the editing toolbar. So I will add a new group template. We'll go into Electric Device, add a new group template. For those of you who might not have added a group template before, this is just a quick demonstration. We can add the tools we want to use and the builders. So for this example, we'll be using our point, service location, actually I'll edit this one. So we had our point service location, and we've added it here to be at the end of our line. So we have an underground line feature and the point at the end of the line. This was the group template I used yesterday in the plenary. Once you've created this, or maybe you have used a selection and created a new preset template, in which, as I described yesterday, the preset template picks up all those features as you've created them. Once we've created those templates, we can search here in the command search for store templates. I've also added mine to my quick taskbar. Now you're about to see a whole bunch of layers. I'm sure so those of you who are using utility networks know that there's a lot that goes into them. Took a second, but here we go. So I'll just close a bunch of those layers. But we can see here on the right-hand side, these little eyes, these blue eyes, and that identifies the templates that are not currently being stored. So we won't be able to see these online. I can quickly click Store. Once I've done this, this should let me know that we've stored our new templates to the data store. So right now I'm in Enterprise, but it works the exact same way in ArcGIS Online. And if I jump into my web editor, we can see the new extension. Adding our line in feature. So that's how you store your preset and group editing templates in web editor. Now I'll pass over to Jess to talk about what's new in analyzing your data.
Cool. So that was a really detailed demo that Mia just gave. I do want to remind you guys that there will be a PDF version of this stream session, also a recording. So if you want to rewatch that demo later on and kind of learn all the many things that she just did there, that will be available for you later. But moving on into analysis. So there are a lot of extensions for ArcGIS Pro. And there's also lots of different types of analysis that we're doing. So we're going to go through some of the kind of newer ones that are just maybe kind of a highlight reel of some of the new things that are coming. So spatial clauses only took about 15 years, but we now have spatial clauses when we're opening up the properties of our layers. So I'm sure a lot of us are used to definition queries, in which we are, able to select something based off of the attributes. But now within the layer, you can actually spatially query something. So let's say we have a big polygon boundary, and we want to select points that only lie in that polygon. We can now do that from the properties. Estimate time to event tool. So I'm a really big fan of this one, as you might have guessed, considering that I demoed it yesterday. This is a really brand new tool. It's the first iteration of this that was released in 3.5, and it's one of the first true predictive analysis that we can do in ArcGIS Pro now. It predicts the time until an event occurs based on prior times, to the event. So for instance, you can use this tool to predict when a pipeline is going to leak, when a bridge needs repair, when a customer will switch providers, or when a borrower will default on a loan. It's completely industry agnostic how you use this tool. I used it to show how different variables could influence tree depth, because that's something that we can predict based off of several different variables. And so with this, it produces an output layer that's already classified. As we saw in the demo, it's a really pretty straightforward tool. It is one data set that has the fields that you need that you load into this tool. It creates an already classified layer, and then has a pre-configured pop-up even. So there's not much you really have to do besides get your data ready for this tool. So yesterday, as I mentioned before, we ran this data off of SBS Biota's tree inspections. And we used 3 explanatory variables that existed inside the data set that would have likely contributed to the death of the tree from Dutch elm disease. So this is a little bit of a sneak peek of what that data set actually looked like when we ran that tool. And so each observation in the input features, so the one thing that you have to put into this tool, it has to have these fields containing, number 1, the age of the observation. And so this age field, sometimes it's the actual age of the individual, But in general, it's the amount of time starting from the first possible time the event could have possibly happened to the time that it did, or that it will. For example, for the lifespan of trees, the age field could have been the current age of the tree, or the age of the tree when it died. We didn't know the age of the tree, but we did know when it was first observed, and we had actually a date of when it was first observed as dead. And then if it hadn't died yet, then we instead put the age to today's date. And then the other requirement is the event indicator. The event indicator, it's binary. It's a 0 if it didn't happen yet, it's a 1 if it did. And that's a very simple field to have. And then explanatory variables, that was the other part of this, is that whatever variables, there's not really a limitation to this, we use 3. And that made sense to us as to the distance to the beetle traps. We used the health of the tree, because that obviously would have to do with whether or not it's going to die. And then also whether or not it had a vaccine. And this was the data set that we plugged into this tool. And it created this, which was a really amazing pre-classified and also pre-pop-up. And so I put the QR code here as the science and the statistics being done behind the scenes of this tool is very advanced. This is not a toy. This is actually a proper scientific paper that was done as to how we're using this. It's based off of survival analysis, in which we're able to calculate basically the time. It assumes that an event will occur for a set of observations at some point. And it used the accelerated failure time model in order to run this tool. And as we can see here with the pop-up gives you a little bit of understanding of the model of what it actually did. It creates survival curves. And with this, you get a blue curve and a blue dot. And it basically shows you when it thinks relatively the event is going to happen, and whether or not it's considered kind of early or late in its predicted lifespan. Or if the event hasn't happened yet, the pop-up charts will show you how much time it would actually take before that event would actually happen. We also saw this, memory use during geoprocessing. So a lot of us, I am sure, when you're running your geoprocessing tools, you don't run it once and then it's perfect and then you never have to look at it again. We oftentimes are creating multiple data sets that we then label as spatial join 1, spatial join 2, spatial join 3. This can help you with that. And that not only is the tool a little bit quicker when you run like this, because you're not actually publishing your final data set yet, but allows you to just kind of reduce clutter when you're running your geoprocessing tools. Moving on to space-time cubes. So this is a data format that we use when we are analyzing spatial temporal data. It can be a little bit advanced and sometimes hard to understand the structure of this. But there's been some updates in the way that we can use this in ArcGIS Pro, and that's with a really intuitive ribbon that now comes up. So when we create these tools, we have now interactive tools to explore it in a 3D scene. So it can help you really get analysis as well in 3D with time and have a curated display in our interaction options. So you can choose multiple variables. You have hotspot analysis that you can do. And we see this being used in lots of different ways. There's many different options for how we want to play with that whole space and time analysis. For instance, we could use a slice pane tool that cuts through the space-time cube, so we can really see those hidden patterns. We also get specialized charts so that when we click on the time cube, we get a nice graph that shows a time series and it explains exactly what's going on. And then we also, of course, have like change point detection. We have forecast results. There's a lot of capabilities with this that I do think you guys should explore. And with 3D Analyst, so point clouds. Point clouds are oftentimes a big use case for ArcGIS Pro and being able to manage, be able to classify, and there's been some updates with this. Elevation range. So point clouds obviously exist at different heights, but maybe you want to only look at a certain height at a time. So you can filter through this. This is really good for buildings. We're getting more and more indoor scans. So maybe we want to try to extract things that are floors or ceilings. And so using this, we can kind of filter to what we want to work with. And when we run tools like extract glass, this gets, it basically works as a filter that is respected in those tools. We also have a new point cloud classification model. For those who this might be a little bit advanced for, all you need to know is that the point transformer V3, it's new, it's big, and it's fast. It helps you to deal with when you have those big scale point clouds and you just want something that can globally classify as fast as possible. And then one last thing is that we have model key classification when we're classifying the ground of point clouds. This is new. It's a new detection for basically trying to streamline and speed up rendering and analysis. Sometimes we cannot deal with the amount of points that we get in these clouds. There's too much, it's too heavy, and you can't really use it. So model key, as you can see in the diagram, it basically just simplifies it. So it gets the key points that represent big changes in ground elevation and slope, but that's it. So it can make it a little bit faster, and it just reduces the data volume that you get from that. Network analysis tools. So this is a really amazing extension that many of us might use when we're doing routing problems, when we're trying to maybe do something like location allocation, and we're trying to assign facilities to certain things, or maybe we are doing the vehicle routing problem, in which we're trying to find the most efficient ways for trucks to deliver things to addresses. So we have a brand new solver, actually, that's called the Waste Collection Solver. And it was designed specifically for residential waste collection. And it's a very, very smart solver. It has a lot of complexities that weren't available in network analysis anymore. Instead of modeling the curb approach, we need to be able to indicate if the driver needs to collect garbage on one side of the road or both, because it varies with waste collection drivers. And also different than the vehicle routing problem is that sometimes you need to use renewals for a truck to go drop off the trash and then continue. Whereas previously, the depots used to empty the truck at the end instead of along the journey. And so this is a really cool tool that's really quite advanced. And again, we don't unfortunately have time to go into great detail about all the new capabilities as a part of it, but I do implore you to check this out if it interests you. The other thing I want to mention is the snap to roads. So this is a new service. It's a feature of ArcGIS routing. And it can be used for a lot of common workflows. Basically, it's exactly like that diagram that I have there, in that you have your roads, you have your GPS locations along it, and you just want to snap them to that road. And this is so you can improve the accuracy of your GPS tracks, because sometimes we lose signal when we're out on the road, or we just had some sort of interference and it's slightly off. This connects it back to the road. But you could use it for other things as well. So maybe you want to compare the actual route that was taken to the planned route, and monitor those changes and see if your drivers are actually following the plan. Or maybe you have a large number of GPS tracks and you want to use snap to roads and combine them to find which roads are the most frequently used. So there's a lot of capabilities for this that I am really excited to see what people do with it. And so with analysis, as I mentioned before, things are also just getting snappier. They're just getting faster, they're just getting easier. So we have the memory workspace, we have ability to overwrite, we have model builder, which we'll go into a little bit more detail on later on. Mia did mention semantic search, but we also have things like just better warning messages that make sense, that have clear labels as to what it's trying to tell you. So these are some of the improvements that have happened. And now a little bit of a fun thing is when we're done with the analysis, we're done with the work, we want to actually show it to somebody. We need to visualize, we need to share it. We've had quite a few improvements in this, but just to quickly run through them, this one. I hope this one's really easy to remember. Pop-up files are now called .pop files. This is a brand new thing. The pop file allows you to save your pop-up templates, which means that you can just copy and paste them basically into your different layers and maintain those crazy arcade expressions that we sometimes write, or just the configuration of those. Makes it a little bit easier. And also just the pop-ups have improved a little bit. So perhaps when you have your features that have a specific drawing order, your pop-up respects that. So when the first thing is meant to draw on top, that's the first pop-up that you get. The image elements will fill up the pop-up a little bit better. And that blue text that's like the title in your pop-up, that can be turned off now. You can go to your navigations and say, no, I'm good. I have my own title, so I don't need to worry about that. Symbology histogram usability. So again, lots of small minor things that just make our lives a little bit easier. For this one, it's for class-based symbology. There's been many times where it just automatically shrinks the bins, and we want to just be able to see what it's actually classifying as. So this has a little bit more usability, so we can change the zoom layer, we can control the bin count a bit better. It's just easier to read. Here's a new tool that's a little bit of an interesting one. So this is a brand new tool that basically allows you to have shared boundaries that are maintained while the size and shape of the input polygons get distorted. So this is when we're kind of getting creative, when we're trying to really get into depth with cartographic representations. And in this case, we have like the total population of each state is that diagram there. But it's still maintaining the boundaries. So it looks funky, but it actually has a lot of cartographic meaning as to why we'd want to use this tool. And something that's just cool to look at, we have clouds now in 3D scenes. And not just clouds, but clouds you can go through, which is quite cool for our navigation in our 3D scenes. We just want to make sure that our weather effects, the actual way that we're using 3D scenes in ArcGIS Pro, are just more realistic and try to make it as interactive as possible. And finally, many of you may not know, but we actually have presentations within ArcGIS Pro. And this is trying to have a similar experience to PowerPoint. But unlike PowerPoint, it's interactive. You can play with the maps in your presentation in Pro. And you can have supportive text, images, or videos, just like you would in PowerPoint. But they are stored basically in your catalog pane. And now we have presenter mode. So again, trying to make it a little bit more like the UI for PowerPoint. And we also have a little bit of some enhancements when it comes to printing things out, when we're exporting. Our raster content, a little bit of a specific one, but sometimes when we were trying to export raster content, we would get kind of weird artifacts or lines. And so if you export it as a single tile, that prevents that. And so it's little changes like that that make things a little bit easier. Or even reports, we can just export to Excel now. So integration. A lot of us do not use GIS tools in isolation. We use other things that are then connected to ArcGIS Pro, for instance. And we do have some notices when it comes to this. So database connection. We all use different kind of databases that might be connected to ArcGIS Pro. One of them could be document databases. So non-relational databases that store markup documents, usually with key value pairs to define data, also known sometimes as a type of NoSQL databases. So ArcGIS Pro now supports Elasticsearch and OpenSearch. And so you can connect to these databases within Pro, and you can actually query the data attributes as well. And for those that didn't know, Parquet is an open source column-oriented data file format. And you can now connect using multi-file connections. So Parquet is really growing in popularity. A lot of organizations are starting to follow this data format. And so with this, you can make sure you access them as long as they have the GeoParquet spatial fields. That is essential. But once you have that, you can then analyze and visualize multiple files at once. And for those of us who use connections to our SQL databases, it's just as a reminder that 3.5 is the last release to support Postgres 3.x. But the newest versions, we continue to support, and ArcGIS Pro now can do 16.x and also PostGIS 3.5 as well. And Snowflake. Snowflake is actually quite a popular database. This is a bit of an announcement in that Snowflake basically made an announcement that they will block single-factor password authentication by May of 2026. And they're going to enforce instead multi-factor authentication. And in general, software with web service architectures like ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online don't support authentication types that require user interaction like that, which is multi-factor. So this is going to impact some Esri customers, and so we just want to make sure people are prepared for this. So if you suddenly can't access your Snowflake databases, or you're a little bit worried about whether or not this might impact you, please scan this QR code because there is a lot of documentation to help guide you through this, and just make sure it's not anything that will impact you. And some of us use Pro with CAD and BIM. So this is another kind of integration of sorts. You'll notice the words direct on here, which is kind of the theme of how we want to be integrating with our CAD and BIM data directly in ArcGIS Pro. So we're streamlining the steps that it takes to publish CAD drawings straight to ArcGIS Online or Enterprise. In earlier versions of ArcGIS Pro, users had to run a lot of different geoprocessing tools in order to share information. But now you can just really easily directly create and then share scene layers with just a couple of clicks. Another thing with CAD drawings is that CAD drawings oftentimes have crosswalks, medians, bike lanes, basically any pavement markings. And they're oftentimes hatches. And it was actually super time consuming to try to convert this to symbology that made sense in Pro. But now we actually get to preserve the design. So when we actually directly integrate with our BIM cloud repositories, we're making this just a bit faster. So next, I'm going to hand it back to Mia, who's going to talk a little bit about automation and AI.
Cool. So in a few minutes, we'll talk about a few ways that you can automate your workflows or just even speed them up using ArcGIS Pro. And then I will get into a little bit of AI. Just to start, like I said, this isn't necessarily automation, but just a way that we think it'd be good for everyone to know about how to speed up your geoprocessing. And this is to use parallel processing. If you haven't heard of this before, it's the ability to split up large jobs to allow for multiple CPU cores or processors to work on one job at the same time. It is one of the easiest ways to improve performance of your tools. To utilize this method, you'll need to navigate to the Environments window or the tab within the tool itself to find the parallel processing factor. This is used to enable and control parallel processing, and it can be either an integer or a percentage value. Each tool, that is supported by parallel processing, already has a default value that you can change based on your data operation and the available resources. But a top tip is to make sure you're not inputting a value that is more than the CPU cores you have available, because this will actually make the processing slower, so having the opposite effect. This is because multiple processors will be competing for resources on the one core. To specify the environment in a way that avoids this competition, you can either use a percentage value less than 100% or a number of processes less than the number of cores on your machine. But if in doubt, just use your best judgment. Next, we'll talk about batch processing. This allows you to run a tool multiple times with either a variety of input data sets or parameters. Simply right-click on the tool, click Batch, and choose your batch parameter. Here you can see we could use the input features, so use the same tool for a bunch of different data sets, or we could change the distance of the buffer or the dissolve type. To make sure, you should be making sure to use the name variable here to dynamically name the outputs. Otherwise, you won't have a bunch of outputs, you'll have the same one overwritten every time. And also be careful, not all of your tools will support batch mode. So just be aware that tools that have multiple input data sets, so intersect or merge, or tools that are creating map layers, such as the make feature layer and make raster layer tools, are not supported. Another way to automate your tools is to schedule them. So you could be doing this to run your tasks later on for heavier tasks while you're not using Pro. Run tools reoccurrence, so every hour or every day, or run multiple tools concurrently using Python. Once you've scheduled the tools, it can still run while your Pro is not even on. You can use the timestamp variables, similar to how we talked about using the name variable earlier, to create timestamped outputs to differentiate them. And also, a hot tip, make sure you're using the full data paths and not the layer to avoid unnecessary errors. You also want to make sure that you've saved the project and necessary credentials, but Pro helps you out here a little bit. You can see there it does throw an error if you have not saved your project first, and does prompt you to do that. Next up, or I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, but automation is also possible with Python. This can get executed in a couple of different places. So Python notebooks allow for visualization and text, not only your Python code, and allow you to immediately view results in a geographic context. The Python window utilizes the interactive window to run code, and you can also make script tools in Python or create standalone Python files. There are ArcGIS Python packages included in Pro as well. ArcPy is a Python site manager that allows you to perform geographic data analysis, conversion, management, and map automation. The ArcGIS API for Python is a Python library that allows you to automate tasks in WebGIS deep learning and much more. To manage these packages, ArcGIS Pro uses Conda to allow to manage multiple environments and store different packages in each of these environments. ArcGIS Pro Py3, the default environment, contains all the Python libraries used in Pro like SciPy and Pandas. And to help you automate your geoprocessing using Python, you can use the copy Python command, or run the export to Python file in Model Builder to send your Model Builder into the Python window. Speaking of Model Builder, this is another way we can use to automate your geoprocessing workflows in a little bit of a more visual way. For those of you who haven't experienced Model Builder or are new to Model Builder, you can think of it as a visual programming language that has a model workflow map. With this example from Plenary, we have our blue-colored input datasets, the yellow-colored tools, and in this case, it's training a deep learning model. So then the outputs are in green. And very easily and very visually, we can see these different components to our model. Newly, Model Builder also supports semantic search, like in the geoprocessing pane, as well as tool suggestions. Again, these are opt-in and an extra install into ArcGIS Pro. These tool suggestions are based on the tools that are in your model and aren't limited to just geoprocessing tools, but also the model-specific tools like iterators and logical tools. Now we'll have a little look at those tool suggestions. So here you can see a DEM has been brought into Model Builder. Tool suggestions are provided after you've added the first tool into a model to help find those next steps in that workflow. That either comes from clicking on the Suggest Tool option in the Model Builder toolbar, or on the output of the tool itself. These predictions are traced back up to 5 tools in your model workflow. So it's looking back to see what you might be doing in the next few steps. To create this tool suggestion, they were based on a sequence prediction model for geoprocessing and model tools trained from using tool usage logs from ArcGIS Pro users who participated in the Esri User Experience Improvement Program. And finally, I'll talk about the ArcGIS Pro AI Assistant, which will also be covered in probably a little bit more detail in the AI sessions tomorrow. Currently, the AI Assistant is available in the beta program, and once installed, it can be found in the Help section pane. And it'll appear like your typical chatbot-looking assistant within the application. There are 4 areas where the AI Assistant can support us. We have help documentation, so this is backed up by ArcGIS Pro documentation, and the assistant can help like a regular chatbot where you can ask it questions and get answers. You can graph queries. The AI assistant can generate open cipher queries for knowledge graph schemas, And as we saw in plenary, ArcGIS Pro AI Assistant can create a query layer as well. Well, behind the scenes, we've had to connect to a database, a SQL database, as query layers are not supported on geodatabases. And finally, you can execute AI-driven actions upon a user's request, such as pulling up geoprocessing tools, zooming to an area of interest, saving layers, and more. What's also cool is that the AI assistant will save your history. So even if you open or close a project, you can revisit past prompts and conversations. And as I mentioned before, for more information on those AI assistants, please check out the technical AI session. Now I'll pass on to Jess.
All right. So the reason that we're bringing up GeoAI right now in our pro session is because when we are running GeoAI, oftentimes ArcGIS Pro is the tool to do it. It's where we train our data, it's where we run the models, and so it is relevant to ArcGIS Pro and our workflows. And there have been some updates in this area with new models being added or just more model explainability. So yesterday we did see in the plenary demo done by Edward that basically we had model explainability. And that he clicked on the pop-up, and then we were able to see basically where the model was looking. So that's from GradCamp, and basically it allows us to better explain object classification results a little bit better. We also had a couple of updates when it comes to like a new tool to process text using an AI model. It allows you to process text from various sources, like text fields in feature classes or tables, text files in a folder, or to support text transformation, entity recognition, text classification. So this tool can do a lot. We are not going to be able to go into great detail about GeoAI, unfortunately, in this session, because we already had a lot to talk about. But please do attend tomorrow's technical session on AI if this is something that interests you, because clearly we have a lot of models that are constantly getting added. From open source models like Hugging Face, to environment, infrastructure, being able to read documents. There's a lot to potentially play with here. And there's New Zealand GeoAI models as well. We just want to make a call out that these are ones that are made on New Zealand data. And so that makes them a lot more accurate than oftentimes global models. For instance, here we have ones that are based off of imagery, in which we have like building classification. We have ones for car detections. We also have expanded, when we talk about infrastructure, we want to be able to get better footprints and keep up to date with those sort of things. And with environmental data as well. So land cover classification is a really popular one and a relatively new one that was created. And it was really important to make a New Zealand-based one as well, because those, land cover differs. The original one from the USA was based in California, where it was very dry. They had a lot more grassland than we do. And so trying to run that model in New Zealand didn't work out so well. There was a lot of misclassifications. And so this one, which is trained on New Zealand vegetation, had a lot better results. And this is a call out that with this one, with land cover at least, the reason this one was chosen was by popular vote. So these AI models that get developed based off of New Zealand data or local data, they come from your feedback. So we really want to know what would be useful to you when we're developing these sort of GeoAI models. So please let us know what would be useful to you. Hopefully we'll be able to have a discussion with you during conference. So we have finished actually a little bit early. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to put into Slido. I did see actually a couple of questions come through, which I'm excited about. So I did have a couple of answers for you. First of all, there was a question on portal projects and whether portal projects are only on Enterprise. So unfortunately, yes, they are only on Enterprise right now. This is a brand new feature that just came out. So they've been working on this for a good almost 2 years now, trying to establish portal projects. As for ArcGIS Online, it's unsure at the moment, and we won't be able to give sort of answers as to when that would be coming. It may be on the roadmap, but unfortunately at this moment we just can't tell you whether or not it will be coming anytime soon. For the next question, can batch processing be read to memory? Yes. So that's actually a really good use case of it, actually, because oftentimes we need to make multiple data sets. And the whole point of batch processing is to be fast, but they may not be temporary. I mean, they may not be permanent. So it is actually quite a good use case for why you would maybe want to do batch processing. Does Pro have to be open for scheduled tools to run? Let me just approve that question real quick.
Nope.
No.
It does not have to be open for scheduled tools to run. You can schedule it for when you're not actually going to be using ArcGIS Pro, which ideally, for those big scheduled processes, that might be the best time for you. But yeah, they will still run when ArcGIS Pro is not open.
Just make sure the license is available.
Yes, please make sure the license is available. Yes, thank you, Malachi. I have another question here. Does the Pro AI Assistant cost credits? And can it help with Arcade? I think we have Mr. Edward Wong who might be able to answer that.
Funny enough, it's the same question that got asked in online session. So right now, any of the AI assistants that are in public preview that you can use, it won't cost you any credits. But when we roll it to general availabilities, that's when there might be a license that are required to use that. What is the other questions other than AI assistant? Can you repeat that question again, please?
Yeah, does the Pro AI Assistant cost credits? Can it help with Arcade? That was the other part of it.
Help with Arcade. We'll see more in this and road ahead, but right now, AI assistant, it's not a coding assistant. We'll have an ArcPy assistant coming, and then there will be a notebook assistant coming, but it's two different things. There's Arcade assistant in online map viewers, but it might come into coding assistant. I'm not sure about bringing Arcade assistant into ArcGIS Pro. And we have understanding the why sessions of AI, and we're going to talk more about how the AI system will work, what's our plan. So it's the first thing tomorrow, 9:15, right after the lightning talk, so come to that sessions.
Thank you. I did have another question. It's quite a good one. Asking for another example of estimate time to event tool, how it could be used as an example in the property space. So, as I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of this tool. And with this, it's very industry agnostic. So you can use it for everything. But again, it does matter about what sort of data sets you have available. So let's say the property space, and this is me coming up on the fly with this one, but I would imagine that maybe you had like property sales. You had a date. That's key to this. You need to have a date of something happening. And so you could have a date of when the house first came on the market and then when it sold. And that could possibly help you then be able to tell when houses might go on the market or to see fluctuating price changes. As long as you have that sort of date field and you can calculate something, you have a date of something happening, and then you're using even up until today's date. That is enough that you could probably run this tool and be able to create. You'd have to do a little bit of data engineering, as I showed before. You have like that column, that's the event indicator. You need to turn everything that had something happen to a binary code that said 0 or 1. But then you would be able to use it. Okay, Edward, I have another AI question for you. Which LLM or AI service is utilized with the AI helper tool?
This question also got asked in online sessions. So with all the AI assistant that we'll be rolling out, there will be a model card that explains and lists out how it's getting used, how large language model is getting used, what large language model is getting used who is the providers, and the principle is we are not taking off any of your prompt or data and feeding it back to do any sort of training, but the model card for each of the AI assistant will explain this when we roll it out to general availabilities. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question here on compatibility needs. So I feel like this is a fair question in that compatibility needs between recent Pro releases and Enterprise portal versions. What happens when Enterprise and Pro versions get too far apart? So I think that during Road Ahead session, which I hope everyone is attending, we do talk a little bit about sort of product life cycles. It is really important to keep track of that. There is usually quite a large time gap when Pro releases come out, and that it doesn't just it's not suddenly unusable. It doesn't shut off usually. What we have is it can go into mature support, but also things just need to be updated. So ArcGIS Pro doesn't leave anybody stranded when that happens. Usually when we switched from like 2.x to 3.x, there were a whole bunch of tools that you could then run to update the schema of things. Or we also had obviously needed to switch compatibility with Python versions as well. So this is a common thing that people ask about or are a little worried about. And so I think we'll touch on this, I think, in Road Ahead in talking about what the plan is with enterprise versions and what the product lifecycle is going to be, but also how that kind of compares to the capabilities and the versions of ArcGIS Pro. I have a question here. It says Possum Pi won't run when it's scheduled. It runs when it's started manually. Are there any alternatives to Windows Scheduler? Is someone here, the person who asked this question, is there more details that I could possibly get from you as to this question?
Again. Okay. Yeah, so when I'm in Pro and I run it, it works perfectly. If I go to Windows Scheduler and run it, it won't run. I'm just wondering if there's an alternative to Windows Scheduler for scheduling processing tools like that.
Have you tried using, are you familiar with coding at all, or do you use notebooks at all in your workflows?
That would be no.
Okay. I would recommend maybe you have a chat with us at the booth, because I think that we might need to look into that for you and dig in a little bit more into your workflow.
Okay.
But I do think that's something that we can help you out with as to some ways around that to make it a little easier.
Thank you.
No problem. Oh, we may actually have, we have a little bit of some advice here. Yep.
Thanks, yeah.
Thank you.
So one thing to check would be, if it's a model or a script, can you run it manually from the Python outside of Pro session?
Pass.
Yeah. Try that.
Can I get back to you on that?
Yeah. So if it is a Python script, just try running it manually from like idle or PyCharm, whatever you're using. See if that works on its own with Pro off. That might, if it doesn't work, then it might be something more about the script, or it could be a licensing issue of some kind. Depends on what's in there. Okay, but happy to talk more about that.
Sweet, thank you for that. And we had one more question here that said, any updates on flood modeling and its usage since its release? Flood modeling specifically, so there's a couple things, and maybe this person also wants to expand on this a little bit, because there's a couple of different things that I could answer this for you. If you're talking about flood simulation, yes, there's been some updates to that as well, and there's more parameters that you can now run with that. Also, with flood simulation, we may be finding out in the future that we're going to move on from just flooding as well, as a little sneak peek in the future. So that's going to be quite a cool scene. If it's to do with like hydraulic modeling or like the hydro toolboxes in ArcGIS Pro. I'd have to double check for you as to whether or not there's been any updates to that, but if there were, they were pretty minor in 3.4 and 3.5. So I can, if you come and find me afterwards, I can get your information and maybe we can follow up a little bit more about that specifically. So awesome, guys. That was the last of the Slido questions. Is there anybody who would like to, in person, ask any questions? That's totally okay. As you guys may be aware, we will be around. So if you would like to have more of a one-on-one chat about any of the questions for ArcGIS Pro, please come and find me or Mia, or visit the Eagle booth at the expo. We'd be more than happy to talk to you, find you resources, or just try to help you the best we can. So thank you guys so much for your time today. We finished a little bit early, which means you guys get first in line for afternoon tea. So you're welcome. There you go. All right. Thank you.